our preview for the 2025 New Orleans Saints. Their offseason in 60 seconds hired Kellen Moore as their head coach, Doug Musmenauer as their offensive coordinator, Brand Staley as their defensive coordinator. Retained Chase Young, 3 years, $51 million, 33 guaranteed. Signed Justin Reed, 3 years, $31 million, 22 guaranteed. Juwan Johnson, 3 years, $30 million. Brandon Cooks, 2 years, $13 million. Acquired Devon Godshaw in a trade from the Patriots. Also brought in Isaac Yiadom as one of their outside corners. Lost Paulson Adebo, MBS, and Will Harrison free agency. Drafted Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle in the first round. Quarterback Tyler Shuck, 40th overall in the second round. Defensive tackle Vernon Broughton in the third round. Safety Jonas Senka in the third round. Linebacker Danny Stutzman in the fourth round. Cornerback Quincy Riley in the fourth round. It's a little bit disorienting. I'm not used to the Saints having that many picks, but they had a decent amount of them last year. Derrik, what are you excited to watch with the 2025 New Orleans Saints?
I said it at the top of the show. I am weirdly intrigued by this team. Not to the end that they will be good, but to the end that I kind of want to watch them for whatever reason. And a lot of that to me comes down to the offensive line. Like, I think it's not just that I kind of like the players. Like, I think Fuaga, kind of in the way that we've talked about J.C. Latham, moving back to his natural position at the right side, I think that matters for a lot. I think he was thrown into the fire a little bit last year. I love Kelvin Banks, and I think he's looked good in the preseason, their first round pick this year. And like Penning, I think you still need a little bit more to see, but like I think even he's looked decent in the preseason next to Kelvin Banks at guard instead of what he was having to do out at tackle. And then you obviously have two more veteran players next to them in Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz. So there to me is a chance that this offensive line is like kind of good. And like to what end? Because the quarterback situation, which we'll get to, I don't know. But I do think that this can be a unit that potentially they are really excited to build around.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that group. And I think this extends to other pieces on the offense for me, too. Like Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, Dave, are exciting players. Like you combine those two guys with a young, potentially ascending offensive line, and Alvin Kamara, who I think showed you last year, still got some juice left in the tank. The supporting cast from a talent perspective on this Saints offense, it's going to be watchable if things break right at the very least.
I think that's what's frustrating about the Saints is like it's easy to bag on them because they don't have a quarterback, and it's easy to sit here and crack jokes about trying to draft a quarterback and is Archie's grandson gonna come out in the draft and save the franchise and all that good stuff. And the bottom line is they got a pretty good team. They just don't have the most important position, or at the very least, we don't know what those guys are. If you want to believe in the quarterbacks, that's fine. We don't know. But what we do know is like I like the receivers. I'm excited about the offensive line. I like Alvin Kamara. Like if they had more at quarterback, especially with how long the offseason is, you don't think I could talk myself into the Saints winning the division with better quarterback play? I absolutely could. But the quarterback's just not there as far as I know. And so it's hard. But I like everything that y'all said. Like there's talent here. This is not Carolina last year. Like this is not a hopeless JV squad.
And like this team wasn't that bad last year. Like they were grotesque to watch by the end because of some of the injuries and stuff, but like they had the same record as the Panthers. It's just that like things broke differently in terms, like we remember the end of the Panthers season looking great, whereas for the Saints it was early before a bunch of guys got hurt. But like this roster and team wasn't that bad.
They were absolutely decimated by the end of last year. They had
horrible.
No pass catchers. And so we'll see. You know, I think with Olave, obviously, it's just a different sort of injury concern because we're talking about concussions. And so that can happen at any time. And, you know, there's more going on there than his football future. And so that's just something to keep in mind when thinking about what this group could look like. But him and Shaheed together, I just think is one of the more dynamic receiver duos in the league, even if Rashid Shaheed is maybe a little bit more limited than other guys we get excited about. I will say about the offensive line, just to throw like a tiny bit of cold water on this is still a theory. We're talking about a rookie left tackle. We're talking about a second-year guy changing sides. We're talking about Trevor Penning, who has been undeniably bad at tackle. That's why they're moving him inside. This is not a cure-all. Like just taking a bad tackle and making him a guard doesn't make him a functional player. And he's dealing with a turf toe that's going to keep him out for a while. So I think if things go well, there are versions of this offensive line that are good. I'm not treating that as any sort of certainty here as we're getting toward the season.
If I dig a little deeper, I know that, right? Like I can look at the unit and I know that, but there's something about looking at those names on paper and being like, they'll hit the 80th percentile and they'll be okay. Like I can't stop myself from doing it. And I don't know why I'm doing that with the New Orleans Saints, but I am.
I do think Erik McCoy is a criminally underappreciated player, and I think his
Mhm.
loss specifically was there were so many reasons why it went off the cliff last year, but Erik McCoy going out early in the year and not coming back until it was not salvageable, I think that goes underappreciated in the league landscape.
Let's talk about the swing points potentially for the 2025 New Orleans Saints. What do you got for me, Derek? Where could this year pivot in your mind for the Saints?
For me, it's the secondary because they have a lot of new pieces in here. I mean, they brought in 2 new safeties with Justin Reed, which I think at the time we were like, "To what end are they doing this?" But, like, again, if I don't think this team is gonna be an embarrassment, I get why they wanted to do that. They bring in Julian Blackmon to, I think, help replace Tyrann Mathieu, retiring. Isaac Yiadom is gonna be their other corner. They're really asking a lot of Kool-Aid McKinstry, who they drafted in the 2nd round last year, to step up. Obviously, they had traded away Lattimore and stuff like that, so and then even at the nickel, Alontae Taylor is one banged up, but has been a player where he's either really good or really bad, and like it just depending on which way he swings for any given stretch, I think could go a long way. So, if like I think in the Brandon Staley defense, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth later, the safety play really matters, and I do think having a guy like Justin Reed actually could go a long way there. So I can see the world where this goes right, but they do need at least like 3 out of 5 of these guys to really play closest to their best level.
Stylistically, I think Justin Reed and Julian Blackmon actually do make sense together. I actually
Oh
think that
yeah,
Justin
it's
Reed kind of
perfect.
makes up for a lot of the weaknesses Julian Blackmon had. And I think Julian Blackmon's tackling issues, some of that has been driven by some of the injuries that he has
Mhm.
dealt with. But what Justin Reed is bringing to you as a tackler and just as a physical presence at safety, I think does make up for some of the concerns you might have about Julian Blackmon.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. It's like the perfect little again, like it's Julian Blackmon. I think we forget that like 2 years ago, a lot of people were excited about him as like, "Oh man,
Yeah.
is he one of those like up and coming?" And then just injury stuff kind of got it taken away from him.
What is your, like, confidence level that this can turn into a workable secondary with all of those guys that you just talked about?
I mean, workable, like I would say like 50, 60%. Like again, Alontae Taylor, I think at times can be really good. And like, I think McKinstry is, I think in an ideal world, like a higher end number 2 corner for you. But like, given where they're at with this unit, I think that can be fine. And then I think Justin Reed is, unless he hits the age cliff this year, still one of the top 8 safeties in the NFL, probably. Like, I think there's enough here that I can piece it together.
Dave, what is your swing point for the 2025 Saints?
Maybe it's the New Orleanian in me, but I can't let go of my interest in the holdovers from the Sean Payton era, and there aren't as many, but there are surprising numbers still kicking around. And if the ones that were on the roster weren't good enough, I love that a Brandon Cooks reunion is going to be part of this season. I like
Well,
that's
we'll see how much Brandon Cooks plays considering they just traded a 4th-round pick for Devon Vele.
and
Which, by the
clearly.
way, that's insane.
Can we talk about that for a minute?
I would like to because Devon Vele, great. He was like when you find the undrafted 26-year-old or whatever he was as the Broncos in Sean Payton's offense, you're like, cool, nice little find. You don't go trade a 4th round pick for that guy. Like, that's insane.
Especially when you're at this stage, when you're the Saints. Like,
Yes.
I think any team that is potentially going to be in the quarterback draft market the following year, you cannot be trading away picks. You're probably going to need to give, unless you end up with the number 1 pick, and we'll talk about this, or you're in position to draft one. Ammo is very important when you could potentially be in the quarterback market. So unless you feel very good about Tyler Shuck being your 2026 quarterback, and I just don't know how you can say that about a quarterback drafted 40th overall, given the hit rate of those guys at the position. You just can't be doing this.
It's such a good trade if you have ambition for the coming season, right? Like I love it if you think you're going somewhere, and if Mickey Loomis believes in his heart of hearts that this team has ambition, even like whatever, maybe they defy all the odds and make the playoffs. Like for what? To what? To what end? Like Derek said about the Dolphins the other night. Like and he's going to be 28 next year when you're probably retooling the quarterback's position. It's weird across the board. It doesn't make sense unless you just don't have any self-awareness about where you are in your roster build.
I mean, that's what the New Orleans Saints have
That's the
been
Saints,
for the
baby.
last
I know.
5 years.
I don't know why I say that with a tone of surprise in my voice. No,
People are going to be yelling at their computers, being like, "It's a 4th-round pick. Who gives a?" Yeah, that's probably true, but that
He was
doesn't mean
undrafted the year before. Like, what are we
yeah,
talking about?
that doesn't mean this is worth doing. Like, you still want more fourth-round picks. They're gonna have a fourth-round comp pick next year. It was too much. The idea that they were gonna have 2 fourth-round picks after having 2 fourth-round picks this year, unacceptable to them.
I do think Vele was a seventh rounder just
Oh,
He was
sorry.
drafted.
Yeah, sorry.
He was drafted.
Okay.
That's pretty good ROI for the
Yeah,
Broncos, by
there
the
we
way.
go.
He's
There we
he's
go.
picked 235, so it's not as if you're far off, Derek. I mean, I get it. In a vacuum, a fourth round pick isn't that big of a deal, but when you are a team that's
It's what the
not
pick represents, David.
no, well, not only
Exactly.
that, but like they are important though. You need bites at the apple. You need the ability to pick players, and maybe you will find somebody important with that fourth round pick. I mean, the Saints know better than anybody. That 2017 draft class was insane. They found difference makers at every level of the thing. Like one pick isn't that big of a deal, but it just represents the ability to add talent to your roster, and to think that that's not important where you are right now is strange. Um, to get back to my point, like, yeah, I don't have high expectations for Brandon Cooks this season. I think we can mercifully let go of the idea that Cam Jordan is like a true difference maker at this stage in his career, but there still are some older players. Obviously, Demario Davis. I already mentioned Eric McCoy, who was drafted toward the end of Sean Payton's time, but he was there for the Sean Payton years. Kamara, obviously. There are some guys, there are some older guys that just could be linchpins here, where it's like, how much do you have in the tank? How high of a level are you going to play? And you're playing an important enough position where if you can dig deep and find good production, it could mean a lot.
What's keeping us up at night about the Saints, I think, is the same for all three of us. But Derek, I'm going to let you dig into this. What is keeping you up at night about the 2025 New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, I mean, it's the quarterbacks. Like, there's really no dancing around it. And I think that is actually especially true. I know, again, it's the preseason, but I think that is especially true after watching them in the preseason. Like, I think Spencer Rattler, when the ball comes out, is the better player, but his issue is that the ball does not come out often enough. He is very, like, he has a lot of the same issues that, like, Caleb Williams has, but he's not nearly as talented of a mover or creator as Caleb Williams has. So you just end up with a guy who takes a million sacks. And I think even in the preseason, again, we're seeing some of that. And then Tyler Shuck, again, I know it's the preseason, and I know that we've seen guys have bad preseasons and then look perfectly fine by the regular season. He has just not impressed me. He just does not yet look like a guy who the speed of the game makes sense to him. He does not look like a guy who comfort in the pocket is very natural to him right now. And so, again, maybe by November, some of that stuff is sorted out and he feels like he knows how the bullets are flying. But again, for a guy they spent, the 40th pick on, and a guy who's older, who's like a 25, 26-year-old prospect, you kind of want him to be out of the gate pretty good. And I'm just a little bit dubious of that.
Yeah, I mean, 40th overall picks at quarterback, and the hit rate in the history of this is not good, period, let alone a quarterback with Tyler Shuck's checkered background. Like, this could absolutely work. And there are some elements about Tyler Shuck as a prospect that were worth getting excited about, but there are plenty of red flags about how this is going to go with a Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler quarterback room. My assumption is that Rattler will start the season and then we will see Shuck eventually because they need some answers on this. But even in a decent situation, even if we think that the supporting cast personnel wise is solid, if the offensive line comes together, there is a chance that the Saints just get very, very bad quarterback play for a majority of this year. And that's really hard to overcome, even with a spectacular supporting cast, let alone one that's probably going to be middle of the road, even in a good situation.
I already mentioned it, so I won't dwell on it long, but I lose a lot of sleep thinking about the idea that Tyler Shuck is the Saints' multi-year backup after this year because they will draft a quarterback. And I mean, you need a backup, that's fine. But if you draft a quarterback in the first round and all you got out of Tyler Shuck was 6 starts in which you won 1 game in his rookie year, and the rest of it is just a super expensive insurance policy, it's not the end of the world. But I don't think it's good process. Not when you had a pretty good idea of how this season was going to go before you even drafted him.
I'm going to throw 2 teams out, both in the AFC South, that approach this in very different ways. The Texans just rolled with Davis Mills. right? They knew
Mhm.
they weren't doing anything, so they just rolled with Davis Mills. They were bad. They got a top 5 pick. They drafted CJ Stroud the next year. They saved whatever second round pick they would have spent on a quarterback in the previous draft. The Titans did the opposite of this. They drafted Will Levis because in their minds, it's like, well, we need a quarterback. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is, right? Like they were obsessed with CJ Stroud in that draft. They decided we need to come out of this with a quarterback. They traded up for Will Levis, which made it doubly bad, but they still drafted Will Levis in the second round. Will Levis was bad, and the Titans were back in the quarterback market the next year again anyway. And so while spending a 40th overall pick when you don't have a quarterback on one just to take a chance, it's not the worst thing in the world. The idea of we need to make sure we're trying to find a quarterback this year just isn't true when you are in the spot that the Saints are in. It's just a need to kind of wave at the idea of competing when it's not overly necessary.
There's some irony there because maybe if Tyler Shuck helps him get the number 1 pick in the draft the way Will Levis did, maybe
I mean, we're going to talk about that in a second here. That's not the last time I'm going to make this comparison.
This was Mickey's master plan the entire time.
I don't know if he's got any of those
spending a
at this
top 40
point.
pick to do that does not feel worth it to me. Derek, Dave, what are you watching in the first month of the season with the 2025 Saints?
I have an earnest answer for this, and I'm actually really excited about it. Again, as somebody who was in high school when Sean Payton got to New Orleans, we knew he was a hotshot offensive mind from the Cowboys. We knew that the Cowboys had a good offense, but as crazy as it seems now, we didn't know Sean Payton, the guy, and he was young. I remember when Sean Payton got to New Orleans, like he wore a visor all the time. I mean, he still does, but like he looked much younger. He looked like Dennis the Menace. Like he looked like a cartoon character. And he would like yell on the sideline and get super animated, and it was goofy. And like it's funny to think about that now with 20 years of context of what a great coach he is and all that he's accomplished. But when he got there, he was just a young dude with a good track record, but not the cemented status that he has now. And I think Kellen Moore is a very fun parallel because what do we know about Kellen Moore? We know that his offenses are great. He's had success pretty much everywhere he's gone. Let's just not talk about the Chargers season. He's had a lot of good offenses. He's helped a lot of good quarterbacks play and score touchdowns. He won a Super Bowl. He's got this great mind for the game, but he's a young dude. He looks like your next door neighbor, kind of, like he doesn't look like somebody that's going to get up in front of an NFL locker room and just get everybody to want to run through a brick wall. And I'm just curious to see Kellen Moore, the head coach, like not how the Saints even play, but like, what does he do on Sunday? Like, is he barking at the refs? Is he going over to the refs before the game being like, hey, we noticed this about their coverage, like throw a flag on this when they do it. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Like, is he winning in the margins on special teams? Does he like jump into a player's arms when they score a game-winning touchdown? I don't know. We don't know about anything about Kellen Moore in this situation, and I think it'll be fun to find out.
I 100% agree with this. I think so much of like what the Saints have done this offseason has kind of like happened in the darkness of night. Like we haven't talked about it at all. And I think part of it is because the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So they hired Kellen Moore a little bit later, and Kellen Moore is just kind of a forgettable head coaching hire. Like there's nothing overly exciting about bringing in Kellen Moore to be your head coach. I think he was a solid offensive coordinator over the last few years. He was not the hottest name on the market. And this extends to what they did with the defensive coordinator. Like I just don't, if you asked 10 random NFL fans who the defensive coordinator is for the New Orleans Saints, do you think half of them would know it's Brandon Staley?
Absolutely not. There's no
I
shot.
don't think so. And I'm
think most
curious
people
what Brandon
assume-
Staley, in his second go around as a defensive coordinator, how does this look? Because some guys are just better suited to be coordinators. So the combination of him and Kellen Moore, I think there are a lot of reasons to be not that enthused about the Saints. I'm at least curious about how this goes.
The Staley thing really fascinates me more because obviously what he did in LA was insanely cool, but also like he was cheating. You have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Like you have probably like two of the most like field tilting players in the league at the time. And so even though he was doing cool stuff, he was getting away with stuff that he wasn't allowed to. When he realized he had to pivot off of some of that as the head coach of the Chargers, just felt like maybe too many things on his plate, trying to do too many things at one time. Now that he can be like, okay, how do I call my defense without having some of those cheat code answers, but also now I don't have to worry about our week to week as a head coach thing. Like who knows if it's going to work, but it's just I am at least like pretty excited that we get to see what that might look like for him.
Let's talk about what success means for what success looks like for the 2025 Saints. I'm going to give you guys a very specific answer to this. I kind of, waved at it before. If the Saints have the 2024 Titans season, where they have a second-round quarterback who is very, very bad, the offensive infrastructure with a play-calling head coach who used to be an offensive coordinator looks solid, right? It's not embarrassing, even if this team is shooting itself in the foot over and over and over again because the quarterback play is so problematic. If you have some young pieces along the offensive line, but it doesn't all the way come together, and you have a defense where you feel good about the coordinator, and you think, all right, if we get better talent in here over the next couple of years, can we feel like we can be like a top 10-ish sort of defense? So can they have the 2024 Tennessee Titans season where they pick number 1 overall, but we feel good about all of those other things? That, to me, is success for the Saints. I'm sure Mickey Loomis and Kellen Moore and everyone there wouldn't say that's success. That, to me, is like the best case scenario for how this can go for New Orleans.
Yeah, like to me, it could be landing at the first overall pick. It could be like miraculously waltzing into 8 games, 8 wins somehow or another. But to me, it's just like if we feel good about Kellen Moore and we feel good about the offensive line, like that's it. And again, it does not matter if they win 3 games or 8. If we get those 2 things and then we can insert the quarterback in there, we're chilling.
They shouldn't win 8 games. No one that roots for the Saints should be rooting for them to win 8 games. The only path that is okay if they win 8 games is that Tyler Shuck is on his way to being like a top 12 quarterback as part of that calculus to win 8 games. If that is not the case, do not want them to win 8 games.
That is like logically the right thing, but I have a little bit of Mickey Loomis brain where I kind of respect like always compete. So
okay,
compete but lose.
That's a perfect. I'm glad you said that, Derrik, because it's funny. 2 things can be true, and this conversation happens in every bad NFL city every fall, where people want the better draft pick, so their team tank and they're rooting for losses. And you got to remember, there's a difference between the locker room and the front office, right? Like the coaches and the players are going to always compete because you got to worry about your job the next day, right? Like we saw it with the Giants beating the Colts last year. All like draft pick be damned. We are professionals and we're going to try our best to win a game. The front office doesn't always have to view it that way. The front office can say, hey, if we see some good things from our coach that make us feel good about that hire, we see some young players take steps and we're competitive, but the record is bad. We're not going to say this publicly, but that's A-okay. The problem is Mickey Loomis doesn't seem capable of thinking that way. And that's why I agree with you, Robert. I think that is a best case scenario for the Saints would be to be the Titans. But I think the organization feels so stubbornly against admitting that type of stuff that this team, by hook or by crook, will find a way to not be the number 1 overall pick. And so I would just say, as long as you don't play your way out of range for a quarterback, I can live with that. If you're picking 8th or 10th, preferably higher, but at the bare minimum, if you're picking top 10, you can find your way to a quarterback, especially with the quarterback class looking the way that it does. I mean, obviously, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there are 3 to 5 guys that people are really excited about heading into the college season. Shameless plug. You can go hear about it on Building the Beast with me and Dane Brugler if you are a Saints fan. But the class should be good enough that you have a shot. So number 1 overall pick would be great, but just don't play your way out of range where drafting a quarterback is a pipe dream instead of a realistic possibility.
They might be within striking distance of a quarterback now, but when they trade a 3rd-round pick for Jalen Coker next week, that's going to start changing. All right. That's all we got for the 2025 New Orleans Saints and for the NFC South in 2025. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for watching The Athletic Football Show. Subscribe to the channel to keep up with us. Like and comment on this video, and we'll see you next time.